It's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. Glad to be back with you. We're going to continue reading in our book, By the Shores of Silver Lake by Laura Ingalls Wilder. Christmas Eve. It had snowed all day, and soft, large flakes were falling. The winds were quiet so that the snow lay deep on the ground, and Pa took the shovel with him when he went to do the evening chores. "Well, it's a white Christmas," he said. "Yes, and we're all here and all well, so it's a merry one," said Ma. The surveyor's house was full of secrets. Mary had knitted new warm socks for Pa's Christmas present. Laura had made him a necktie from a piece of silk she found in Ma's scrap bag. Together in the attic, she and Carrie had made an apron for Ma from one of the calico curtains that hung in the shanty. In the scrap bag, they found a piece of fine white muslin. Laura had cut a small square from it, and secretly Mary had hemmed that square in her fine stitches to make a handkerchief for Ma. Now, a handkerchief, most people don't use those anymore. We use Kleenexes or a tissue when we're blowing our nose, and then we throw it away. But back then they didn't have those type of things, so they made them out of cloth, and then they washed them when they were done. They put the handkerchief in the apron pocket. Then they wrapped the apron in tissue paper and hid it under the quilt blocks in Mary's box. There had been a blanket striped across the ends, red and green. The blanket was worn out, but the stripe end was good, and from it Ma had cut bed shoes for Mary. I'm not sure if that's like a slippers is what I'm thinking, but maybe it was shoes she wore in bed. Laura had made one and Carrie the other, seaming and turning and finishing them neatly with cords and tassels of yarn. The shoes were hidden carefully in Ma's bedroom so that Mary could not find them. Laura and Mary had wanted to make mittens for Carrie, but they did not have enough yarn. There was a little white yarn and a little red and a little blue, but not enough of any one color to make mittens. "I know," Mary said. "We'll make the hands white, and the wrist, this part right here, will be red and blue stripes." Every morning while Carrie was making her bed in the attic, Laura and Mary knitted as fast as they could. When they heard her coming down, they hid the mittens in Mary's knitting basket. The mittens were there now, and they were finished. Grace's Christmas present was to be the most beautiful of all. They had all worked on it together in the warm room, for Grace was so little that she didn't notice. Ma had taken the swan skin from its wrapping carefully and cut out a little hood, to go over like a coat. The skin was so delicate that Ma trusted no one else to handle that. She sewed every stitch of that hood by herself, but she let Laura and Carrie piece out a lining of scraps of blue silk from the scrap bag, so it would be the down from and skin from the swan, but inside it would be lined with that beautiful fabric. After Ma sewed the swan's down hood to the lining, then it would not tear. Then Ma looked again in the scrap bag and chose a large piece of soft blue woolen cloth, so made from sheepskin, or the wool from the sheep, that had once been her best winter's dress. Out of it she cut a little coat. Laura and Carrie sewed the seams and pressed them. Mary put the tiny stitches at the hem at the bottom. Then on the coat, Ma sewed a collar of soft swan's down and put narrow swan's down cuffs on the sleeves. The blue coat trimmed with the white swan's down and the delicate swan's down hood with its lining as blue as Grace's eyes were beautiful. It's like making doll clothes, Laura said. Grace will be lovelier than any doll, Mary declared. Oh, let's put them on her now, Carrie cried, dancing in her eagerness. But Ma said that the coat and the hood must be laid away until Christmas, and they were. They were waiting now for tomorrow morning to come. Pa had gone hunting. He intended to have the biggest jackrabbit in the territory for Christmas dinner, and he had. At least he brought home the very biggest rabbit they had ever seen. And I'll show you what it looked like when Pa was coming home with that rabbit. You see that? Skinned and cleaned and frozen stiff, it waited now in the lean-to to be roasted tomorrow, like so many people have roasted turkey. They didn't have turkeys there, so they had rabbit. Pa came in from the stable, stomping the snow from his feet. He broke the ice from his mustache and spread out his hands to warm above the stove. Phew, he said. This is a humdinger of a cold spell for the night before Christmas. It's too cold for Santa Claus to be out, and his eyes twinkled at Carrie. We don't need Santa Claus. We've all been, Carrie began. She clapped her hand over her mouth and looked quickly to see if Laura and Mary had noticed how nearly she had told secrets. Pa turned around to warm his back in the heat from the oven, and he looked happily at them all. We're all snug under cover anyway, he said. Ellen and Sam and David, the horses and the cow, are warm and comfortable too. I gave them extra feed for Christmas Eve. Yes, it's a pretty good Christmas, isn't it, Carolyn? Yes, Charles, it is, said Ma. She set the bowl of hot corn mush on the table and poured out the milk. Come now and eat. A hot supper will warm you quicker than anything else, Charles. At supper, they talked about other Christmases. They'd had so many other Christmases together, and here they were together again, all warm and fed and happy. Upstairs in Laura's box was still Charlotte, the rag doll from her Christmas stocking in the big woods. The tin cups and the pennies from Christmas in Indian Territory were gone now, but Laura and Mary remembered Mr. Edwards, who had walked 40 miles to Independence and back to bring those presents back from Santa. They never heard of Mr. Edwards since he started alone down the Vergis River, and they wondered what had become of him. Wherever he is, let's hope he's as lucky as we are, said Pa. Wherever he was, they were remembering him and wishing him happiness. And you're here, Pa, Laura said. You're not lost in a blizzard. For a moment, they all looked silently at Pa, thinking of that dreadful Christmas when he almost had not come home, and they feared he never would. Tears came into Ma's eyes. She tried to hide them, but she had to brush them away with her hand. They all pretended not to notice. It's just thankfulness, Charles, Ma said, blowing her nose. Then Pa burst out laughing. That was the joke on me, he said. Starving to death for 3 days and nights and eating the oyster crackers and the Christmas candy, and all the time I was under the bank of our own creek, not 100 yards from the house. I think the best Christmas was the time there was a Sunday school Christmas tree, said Mary. You were too little to remember, Carrie, but oh, how wonderful it was. It wasn't really as good as this one, Laura said, because now Carrie is old enough to remember, and now we have Grace. There was Carrie. The wolf didn't hurt her. And there on Mary's lap sat the little sister Grace, with her hair the color of sunshine and eyes as blue as violets. Yes, this is the very best after all, Mary decided. And maybe next year there'll be Sunday school here. The mush was gone. Pa scraped the last drop of milk from his bowl and drank his tea. Well, he said, we can't have a tree, for there isn't so much as brush on the Silver Lake. We wouldn't want one anyway, just for ourselves. But we can have a little Sunday school celebration of our own, Mary. He went to get his fiddle, and while Ma and Laura washed the bowls in the pot and set them away, he tuned the fiddle and roseted the bow. Frost was thick on the window panes, and frost furred the cracks around the door. Thickly against the clear upper edges of the window panes, the snowflakes fluttered. But lamplight was bright on the red and white tablecloth, and the fire glowed behind the open draughts of the stove. We can't sing so soon after eating, said Pa, so I'll just limber up the fiddle. Merrily he played, Way Down the River on the Ohio, and Why Chimed the Bells So Merrily, and Jingle bells, jingle all the way. Oh, what fun it is to ride in a one-horse open sleigh. Then he stopped and smiled at them all. Are you ready to sing now? The voice of the fiddle changed, and it was going to sing a hymn. Pa played a few notes. Then they all sang. Let's see if I can figure out a tune. Yes, a brighter morn is breaking, better days are coming on. All the world will be awakening in a new and golden dawn. And many nations shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. The fiddle's voice wandered away. Pa seemed to be playing his thoughts to himself, but a melody grew out of them and throbbed softly until they all joined in and sang. The sun may warm the grass to life, the dew the drooping flower, and eyes grow bright and watch the light of autumn's opening hour. But words that breath of tenderness and smiles we know are true are warmer than the summertime and brighter than the dew. It's not much the world can give with all its subtle art, and golden gems are not the things to satisfy the heart. But oh, if those we who cluster round the altar and the hearth have gentle words and loving smiles, how beautiful the earth. Through the music, Mary cried out, What's that? What, Mary? Pa asked. I thought I heard. Listen, Mary said. They listened. The lamp made a tiny purring sound, and the coals softly settled a little in the stove. Past the little space above the white frost on the window, falling snowflakes twinkled in the lamplight shining through the glass. What did you think you heard, Mary? Pa asked. It sounded like, there it is again. This time they all heard a shout, Out in the night, in the storm, a man shouted and shouted again, quite near the house. Ma started up. Charles, what on earth? Well, that's where the chapter ends. So you'll have to come back tomorrow to hear whose voice that was. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I'm really looking forward to Christmas this year. I won't get to be around much family, but Jason and I will be here, and I'll get to talk to my sons and hopefully all of my grandchildren. It's so much fun when I could be around the grandchildren, or when my children were fun. Were little. We had so much fun. But we're still going to have a good time this year. And I'm going to remember all of them in my heart. I hope you have a wonderful Christmas. It's coming up very soon now. Well, it's Maria from Still Dreaming Homestead. I want to pray blessings on you and on yours, in your house and out of your house, in the day and in the night, and whatever you do, keep dreaming. Good night.